It's one of the first Spitfires. You know, that in itself gives it a very, very special place in history. Secondly, it's flying over the air battle for Dunkirk, which is the first time fighter command is engaged. Thirdly, it is a Spitfire from 92 Squadron, which is one of the most celebrated squadrons in the RAF, and certainly one of the most celebrated fighter squadrons. Peter Cazenove was flying this plane on the 24th of May 1940 during the air battle for Dunkirk, and he and his flight commander dived down onto a formation of Dornier 17 bombers, and they were hit by return fire. Unfortunately for Cazenove, he just got that one bullet in the wrong place, and struggling, he realised he wasn't going to be able to make it home to England, and so was looking around where he could crash land, and just a little bit further south in Calais, because the town was still held by the British at that point, and so he belly landed there on the wide, flat, open sands, and just had time to radio back saying, you know, tell my mother I'm okay and I'll be back for tea. The Germans, although they had lots of photographs taken of soldiers sitting on it as mementos, actually the German authorities just left it there and eventually got sunk into the sand and was covered by the sea. One of those who discovered the wreck tried to track down Peter Cazenove and managed to find his wife and spoke to her, and she said, oh, you're a week too late, he died a week ago. And she said that as he was in his final days, he was often talking about his wartime and wondering what had happened to the Spitfire. But the tragedy is he'll never know, and he'll never see just how amazing it's looking today. Well, these things are not just war machines, they are a thing of beauty, but they are also a bit of engineering of extreme detail and fine creation. I mean, really, to look at any part of this plane is something amazing to behold. Just look at the Merlin engine, look at the shape of those incredible elliptical wings. You just look at what this stands for. This is the plane that helped save Britain in 1940 and helped Britain ultimately to win the war.
My father, when he heard that I was coming to do this with this particular Spitfire, bought out a book, one of my grandmother's old photographic books. She was an amazing photographer. There was this amazing picture that I found with her, with one of her very good friends, who was a pilot called Paddy Green. And Paddy Green actually flew this very Spitfire. So to have that connection as well, to see, you know, these wonderful photographic books that I've been looking at my whole life, and to see my grandmother with Paddy, and then to actually be here in front of one of his planes that he flew, actually means so much to me on a personal level. So to be here to touch his plane that he flew in means a lot.
Mo, we're here in this hangar surrounded by thousands of bits of Spitfire, but when you first got the Mark 1 in, I mean, how do you start on a project like that?
Well, the wreckage of this Mark 1 arrived with us in 2007, and we inspect that wreckage, see what items we can salvage and restore, and then the restoration will actually begin using what we can from that original aircraft.
And was there much that you could still use?
The early Spitfires used a lot of stainless steel to make their components, and that stainless steel survived in the environment of the beach. So we're able to reuse those components, and a lot of cosmetic items in the cockpit we also could use.
Really? So what about the joystick and things like that?
Some parts of the joystick we were able to use, yeah, clips, control columns, some pipes.
And were you surprised by just how many bits of that original Spitfire you could use again?
It was surprising considering the environment it sat in.
What's the most difficult bit to restore?
The wings are by far the most time-consuming part to restore. Yeah. They're very complicated design, many, many parts.
And yet it's perhaps its most famous feature.
Yes, that is indeed.
And obviously in the height of the war, you can build a Spitfire Mark 1 in a week, but it's a slightly longer process here, isn't it?
Yes, to build a Spitfire to this level of authenticity took us 3 years.
3 years?
Yeah.
And how many men were working on that?
That was 12 guys.
Gosh, that's incredible. And you were talking about the detail of authenticity. I mean, how do you get that?
A lot of time was spent researching aeroplanes around that particular period of May 1940, because at that time development was so rapid that the aeroplanes were changing on a weekly basis with upgrades and modifications. So a lot of time was spent identifying exactly the modification state of this aeroplane and recreating that.
So would you say that this Mark 1 is the most original of its type?
Yes, it's certainly the most authentic restoration that's been done.
The origin of the project came about in almost a prosaic way. I had a desire to buy a Spitfire, and I ran this idea by one of my oldest friends, Simon Marsh. And so he found one, a Spitfire which had been shot down in 1940, had resurfaced in northern France, and we purchased what was left of the airplane, and we made a conscious decision that we would restore it to the very, very, very highest and most authentic standards. It's a project that really became a journey to be able to honor those who had given so much to our collective history. I have never once lost gratitude for those who were the sentinels and held the line between tyranny and civilization. Much has happened over the span of the decade and a half since I originally asked Simon for his help in creating this project. Simon is no longer here with us, and I feel that the time has come to be able to pay homage to him. And the proceeds from this auction are going to be given back to several charities. There was something about the Spitfire, the grace, the beauty, that really has made it one of the great and most enduring symbols of the Battle of Britain. What we hope is that it will find an owner who will be able to take the next step in this plane's journey in a way which will give them the joy and the pride which Simon and I experienced in building it.
What is it actually like to fly a Spitfire?
It's a unique experience. A Spitfire is generally a lovely aeroplane to fly. One American said, you don't get into a Spitfire, you put it on, and it's very true. You strap the thing to yourself, and there's lots of smells, and there's lots of noise, and there's lots of experiences that your body undertakes when you're flying something like a Spitfire. So as a type, they're phenomenal. When you're flying it, it's a huge privilege, and also one that you're very conscious, you need to look after it.
Do you find all the different Spitfires kind of have a different quirks and different things and different
Yeah, they do. They do. They've all got their own character. Certain aeroplanes have a slightly different noise, they have a slightly different smell, they perform slightly differently. Yeah. Even within the same marks, you can, if you get into a cockpit of one aeroplane, you can identify which one you're in. Right. Just by the different temperament of the aeroplane.
And just because I've never been inside a cockpit while starting that amazing Merlin engine up, is it just go through? Do you still get really excited about it?
Yeah, you do. I mean, when it sort of coughs through the exhausts and all of that comes past you, and you instantly smell it. So you get a smell of oils and fuels, and then of course you start getting the warmth come from it, because the engine generates a lot of heat, and so that gradually starts coming back through the cockpit.
Because you must have flown many, many aeroplanes. What is so unique and what is so special about a Spitfire?
It looks so beautiful as a design.
Yes, stunning.
It's one of those old sayings, if it looks right, it'll fly right.
Yeah.
And it's very true for the Spitfire.